Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Black Lawyers Podcast. Today, I'm super excited to have Representative Justin Pearson uh, in the room with us. He has been making headlines with how he has pushed forward, not just for his state, but I just feel like with the rights of Black Americans in general. And so we're just super excited to just have you on the podcast to learn a little bit more about you and obviously what's going on in your state and also how it's impacting other states that are facing similar issues. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I am super humbled and honored to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I do make all my guests play hot topics. And so, as I mentioned, one of the hot topics or what is trending right now is redistricting of several southern states. Who knows? Probably more to come. But particular in your state, there was this very powerful image. Well, there are actually two images of you that, and maybe I'll have my editor edit them in here, but there was an image of you like side by side with Martin Luther King, like when they were escorting Martin Luther King out, and then how they were escorting you out. And I was like, wow, I kind of feel like we're in a time where you almost can't tell the difference. You can't tell that we're in 2026 and in your photo. Like it looked exactly like the pose and how Martin Luther King was being taken out by the police. So I saw that image. And then I also saw this image where you're like face to face with a guard. And I don't know if it was like he wasn't letting you in. I didn't know what was happening in the photo. So maybe you could tell us what was happening in that photo. But someone captured you like right in his face. And it was so in fact I'm pretty sure on our social media page is one of our picks of the day. I'm sure we posted it there. But can you tell us about what was happening in all these photos first, and then just like your thoughts in general about the special sessions that southern states are doing to gut the Voting Rights Acts and dilute the black vote?
Yeah, I mean, we are in a very difficult and challenging time in our country. And I believe the temperature that people are feeling that has hit a zenith is an acknowledgement that we are experiencing the destruction of our democracy from within, with the rise of a neo Confederacy that is trying to strip Black people of their political autonomy and power that we fought for hundreds of years up until the Voting Rights Act, until now, quite frankly, and the Calais decision by the Supreme Court, which has in essence been used as a green light by southern states to take away majority Black districts and Black political power, should deeply trouble, concern all of us, and force us to do things that we might not otherwise do. And so, in that first image that you mentioned, my brother, that's my oldest brother, Keyshawn Pearson, he refused to leave the gallery when the Speaker of the House was clearing it. The Speaker can force people to move at will and tells troopers to move them just because they might make a noise. But he hadn't made any noise. He hadn't made any sound. And in fact, there are two white women next to him, Lauren and Allison, who are big supporters of ours. And they also refused to move. But his troopers didn't escort them, they didn't touch them at all. And that's something people need to notice. But in that picture, I ran upstairs to get my brother, and I told them I'd walk him down. And then they started tying me up. These state troopers who I hadn't seen before, they don't typically work at the Capitol. And the supervisor said, "Let Rep Pearson go." He says this 4, 5, 6 times, but one of the troopers refused. And kept grabbing me and trying to hold my brother. And he and I got into an altercation about that. But the truth of the matter is, those images being so similar is also so heartbreaking. The state is still being used and weaponized against Black folks, right? I was attending a session in the Senate where they were talking about this racist redistricting and the consequences and implications it would have for the district that I currently represent in the Tennessee House of Representatives and that I'm running for the United States Congress to represent. This is how essential this district is. I was in the committee hearing with the senators. About to take a seat, and the chairman says, "If the people outside of these doors bang on the walls again, I'm cutting this entire hearing off." And so I step outside to tell all of the organizers, all the activists, all the advocates, hey, just don't hit the walls, right? Keep screaming, keep singing, keep doing all that, but don't hit the walls. When I tried to go back inside is when the sergeant at arms stands and blocks my way and says, the chairman has said you can't enter, right? Like He said the only people who can enter are the people who are going to testify and the senators, and that's it, and media. And so this is what we're running up against, where even an elected official whose district is being directly impacted, and district I'm running for in the United States Congress is being directly impacted by the decisions made by the people on this dais can say, no, I'm not going to let you come in. I'm not going to let you be seen and be heard in this place. It's heart wrenching to see what's happening, but it's also not surprising. This is authoritarianism. This is fascism. This is how they work and operate, is to stop you and to silence you. But we refuse to be silenced.
Absolutely. I mean, just even how you were describing it, I almost felt like I was there, as you were describing it. And I have this running joke with my family. I was born in the right time period because I don't know. And I know people say, oh, you would have just adjusted and whatever. I'm like, no, I think I very much would have been like a Martin Luther King, a Malcolm X, a Rosa Parks. I don't think I could just sit by and just be like, well, this is the status quo. So thank God we have some people that have gone before us to, push the doors open that, we're currently walking in. A statistic that we say on this podcast a lot because it hasn't changed much, but less than 5% of even lawyers in this country are Black. And sometimes it's hard for me to understand that because I'm like, oh, I know so many Black lawyers, but it's like, no, you add up all the lawyers in this country, we're less than 5%. And this statistic has not changed very much in the last 30 or 40 years. And then it's similar in terms of like who runs for office. Like, it's not that many Black congressmen or Black female congressmen or things like that. We're always going to be in the minority. And so while doors have obviously been open for us, and I guess arguably they still technically had it harder, like you said, moments that you mentioned and captured in those photos reminded me that yes, we've come far, but we still have a long way to go.
That's
We
right.
still, those photos remind me, right? So,
Yeah, and that's the part that's really actually so important for us right now. Somebody said, whatever you thought you would do in the
mhm,
40s, the 50s, and the 60s, you're
mhm,
doing it right now. This is
mm,
our time. This is our generational moment
mhm,
to help transform and make this country what it's supposed to be. And so, if you were going to be an advocate, then you're advocating now. You're an activist
mhm,
now. You're using
mhm,
your platforms and your positions of power
mhm.
now to advance the cause. And I think for people, and my wife, she's about to join the 5%. She graduates next
Oh,
year
great.
as a
Awesome.
lawyer. I know it's
Mhm,
still too few, but it is a recognition that with the privilege that we have been able to gain because of the strides of people before, how we use them now really matters, right?
mhm,
How elected officials who are in the positions now actually matters to do more than just talk about, I pushed yes or no on a bill for a bill, but like, how'd you build power in our
mhm,
communities, organize people, fight for people? I think this is the moment for us to really ask some of those really serious and important questions.
mhm, mhm. So tell me this, and I know you can't necessarily speak for all states, but we'll just start with your state. With these special sessions they're calling right now that the Supreme Court has made their decision and they're redoing the lines to dilute the Black vote. Does this actually, for example, you're a state congressman, you're running for U.S. Congress, is this going to like immediately come into effect? Like, is this going to affect, as you mentioned, you're running for the August primary? If you win that, then obviously you move on in November. Is this affecting anything like this year for this election cycle to your
Absolutely.
knowledge? Okay,
Absolutely. So we're in
okay,
litigation right now trying to
okay,
prevent these maps from being used. But as
okay.
of today, the new maps that were passed were written, drafted, and passed in 3 days as the
Wow.
single largest and swiftest execution of Black dilution of political power since the end of the 1800s after Reconstruction and the
Mm,
creation of new state constitutions. Like, at lightning speed. over 700,000 people lost what was in effect their representation for over the last 50 years, or their district representation in Congress over the last 50 years by, that immediately and that quickly. And so this, the new District 9, which I'm running in, which
Okay.
extends from here in Memphis and Shelby County all the way up to Williamson County, now 15 districts, 15 counties wide, is brand new, and it is the one that we're having to run in until the courts do something differently. And our
Mm,
campaign, obviously, we're in court, we're in litigation. We're hopeful that the original districts are allowed to
mhm,
exist because it's the only majority Black district in our community and in our
mhm,
state. But and that's why we know we were targeted for that reason. But the truth is, we don't
mhm.
know. So right now, we're having to run, in essence, two campaigns at once. If
In the
the whole
event
district,
in the event they redirect. Okay.
exactly, exactly,
Interesting. Wow.
and so
Talk about already. I mean, it's already hard to run for office, but you're having to now, knock on doors in two different maybe areas, because in
right,
the event, one decision sticks, you may be
that's right,
looking at a slightly different district going into your August primary in
exactly.
Tennessee, and then obviously in November. So again, I'm not sure if I know obviously Georgia. I want to say Alabama. They also had
Mhm.
special sessions.
That's
These all
correct.
these southern states. If not all, most of them, yes, it would
Mhm.
actually impact elections this year. And
This
so,
year, and that's what they want. They want them to
okay.
go into effect. I mean, you got to remember the catalyst for this was the Calais decision, right, from the
Hmm.
Supreme Court, and
Hmm.
then juxtaposed with Donald Trump's wanting to win the House and the Senate,
Hmm.
right, to have
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
majority. And he
Right.
knows right now, the way the maps were originally
It
constructed,
he wouldn't have the majority.
he
Right.
wouldn't have the majority. And
Right.
so he's
Very
been trying to
strategic.
push for these
Hmm.
states to change the maps and rig the election for his own benefit. Now, if
Hmm.
that means ripping off our democracy, he doesn't care, right? But it's
Right.
rigging it and stealing the elections for his own benefit, which is why you have so many states doing these actions. Alabama's Supreme Court,
All at the same time. It's not,
all at the
this
same
is
time.
not a coincidence. And it's so funny because when it first started happening, I'm like, oh, Georgia's kind of quiet. I was like, oops, spoke too soon.
They're coming. I mean, Tennessee always goes first, right?
Oh, so Tennessee always goes
Tennessee's
first.
totalitarianism goes first, and then
Okay.
it's like, who's next? Georgia, Texas,
Yeah.
Louisiana, right?
Yeah.
Like we're like
I was
they chase
waiting. I was
after
like,
each
oh,
other.
Georgia's kind of
Race to
quiet
the
on this.
bottom. It's a
Yeah.
race to the bottom, man. Seriously, it's so sad.
So yeah, I mean, and at this point, I guess my only other question then is, okay, if you're not sure, like right now it's in effect, it may revert, it may not.
Mhm,
Um, how do like would, for example, your primaries in August, and then if you moved on, it would be November. If you're
mhm.
currently in a lawsuit, would it like total it? Would it hold it? Or they have to make a decision by August? Like whatever the decision is, they have to make it by August.
Sure. No, they don't. I mean, they could kick this can
Oh,
down the
interesting.
road as much as
Oh,
they like. The
oh,
truth is,
okay.
because it's such a politically important issue and question, the courts should be trying to get to an answer much sooner. But there's no, I mean, the courts have shown us how partisan they are. They
Mm-hmm.
don't have any
Mm-hmm.
desire or any
Mm.
statutory obligation to make a
Okay, I
decision
see.
more
So it's not
quickly.
like, oh,
That's
by
the
this
problem.
point they have to. Okay, interesting, interesting. Hence why you said, let me run two campaigns, because I don't know what this is going to look like in August. I don't know what this is going to look like in November. Well, that's really
That's
good information for our voters. I mean, obviously, I'll go ahead and say, well, we're going to endorse you. Obviously,
Thank you.
anybody we bring on, we endorse. We've endorsed several people. That have come on the podcast. But yeah, we'll obviously send you your official endorsement. But that's one of the things we do. We officially endorse. We want to make sure we have all the information. Like, this is where to donate. This is where to
Yes,
volunteer. This
absolutely.
this is this is the date. These are the early voting dates. Get your vote out of the way. We make sure we're part of that effort. If we're endorsing, it's not like, oh, we just endorse this person. It's like, no, these are the
Appreciate
resources.
that.
These are the links. Things like that. So we're really happy to obviously endorse you. You're very young, but I've been watching you for some time. And I was like, oh my God, he's so young, but he's like not backing down. He's out there. And
Never that.
when you get a chance, listen to my Juneteenth episode last year. So I always do a special Juneteenth episode was with Al Sharpton. So I'm in DC right now. Drove up to New York and met him in his office and interviewed him. And when you get a chance, listen to it because I said, well, we're running out of people. We want you to be around for some time, but you get up there in age. At the time, Jesse Jackson was obviously still alive.
Right.
Obviously, we had Ben Crump, but I was like, you can't really. It's crazy that I'm like kind of searching for names, right? We don't have a
Yeah.
lot of people that are activists and really putting themselves out there. And he was like, well, everyone can't do what I do, right? Like everybody, but you can do something in whatever capacity and whatever role. So
That's right.
I'm just happy to see that inside and outside of your role as a congressman, whether it be state or U.S. Congress, you're just an advocate. You're one of our next advocates to watch, and you're going to be the face of that next group because at some point we have to usher another group in, right? So I'm really happy that you are a part of your group. If someone hasn't thanked you for your service so far, we thank
That's right.
you. It's
Thank you.
important. And it's just important for even the next group that's coming after you. Like they see
Exactly.
that, oh, this young man actually did it. So there's nothing stopping me. Like if I want to run if I'm in my 20s, my early 30s, like I don't have to be
Yes.
50 to run. Like I can.
Right. Or 80.
Right. You don't have to wait. Like there's no rule that says, I think in fact, most of our presidents were like really, really young, like, obviously a long time ago. So yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have to necessarily, and yes, with what do they say? With age, obviously comes wisdom and life experience and
Mhm.
things like that. I'm not saying you wouldn't be able to benefit from that, but what I
Mhm.
will say is you don't necessarily have to wait.
That's
We
right.
we need folks now. So, with that being said, well, thank you for playing our round of hot topics. I
Absolutely.
wanted to transition into who you were before you were a state congressman,
Mhm.
an advocate, and all the many things. Who were you before all of this?
Yeah. I think, most people know me from my activism and work here, advocacy as it relates to Black voting power.
Okay.
But, if you go back, you can go back, let's go way back when I was in
Yeah,
high
let's go high
school.
school. High
Let's go
school. What
high
were you doing
school.
in high
Let's go high
school? Yeah.
school. When I was in high school, at Mitchell High School, I was in 10th grade. My brother was in 11th grade, Tim, God rest his soul. And we didn't have textbooks at our school. And so I went to the school board and with the one textbook I had and with my mom's college degree or maybe her master's degree. And I said, there's no way we're going to earn this if we don't have these. And the next day, like two 18-wheelers worth of trucks showed up with books for every student, for every class, from anatomy and physiology to English to geometry, algebra, Spanish. Like everybody got books for every last one of their classes. And I was like, wait a minute. And I was 15. I was like, okay, so there's something about going to people in power, advocating and demanding what you need. And as I stayed at that school, we got advanced placement courses. We got a new principal, Principal Meeks. We got new teachers. We got advanced placement and honors courses as well in government, in English, in all these other subjects that I was just like, this is what I'm talking about, right? Like, this is investment. You fast forward from that in college, I started a summer program back home in Memphis. And then when I came back home in 2020, after working, well, I was still working as the special assistant to the CEO of a big nonprofit called Year Up that does workforce development, making sure Black kids, honestly, and students of color, kids of color, get access to jobs in corporate America. I learned about $1 billion pipeline that was being built in our district. What I say district now, but back then it was just my community where we're from in Westwood and Boxtown area. And I learned about that during the height of the pandemic. It's October, September, October. And I was like, no, no. We had just experienced the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. And it's just like Black folks have been taking on so much. And now we were being told to take on a crude oil pipeline that was going to impact our drinking water, that was going to take and use eminent domain to take Black people's land that they've had in their family ancestrally. And so I organized our entire community, neighborhood associations to the business community, Chamber of Commerce to elected officials to fight and to stop this project. So we had a social strategy, we had a community strategy, we had a legal strategy, and we won. And from there, is where I really started to see politics matters. My mentor, God rest her soul, Dr. Barbara Wood Cooper, was a huge proponent and supporter of mine. And when she passed in 2022 is when I actually ran for office. So I was 27, I guess, when we started to run, and I was 28 when we first won the seat. But it was an understanding that you got to have people in politics who understands movement, who understands power building, and who doesn't view their job just to, sit up and look pretty. It is like, how do you serve? And so I've had more town halls than every state house member and state senate member and federal member of the Shelby County delegation. It's like I've coordinated and organized. We built a nonprofit that has now reached probably $1 million worth of investment into our community. Like, I've been really fortunate in my life. I will say that. Very, very, very blessed, from being financially poor and spiritually rich to being in the position that I am now to help
Mm.
effectuate change in our community.
What do your parents think about all this?
They are super proud. They are some super, super
Were they
proud
like
parents.
you? Were they shocked? You're like, well, I'm gonna run for office. Like, would it? Would I mean? I guess. Well, maybe they weren't that shocked because, like you said,
They
you've
were
been kind of
not.
at this for a long time, just not in a official like role, but you've been
Exactly.
advocating. So maybe they weren't
Exactly.
too surprised.
They weren't too surprised. My parents, I ran for like president of first grade or something. And
I
so,
love that.
but I was the president of my class in sixth grade, or president of my school in sixth grade. I've been like interested in student government, student council
Hmm.
associations and stuff for a while.
Okay.
I didn't know I was going to be this young in elected office,
Hmm. Hmm.
but this is where God has called us to be at this season and this moment in time. But yeah, they knew I wanted to do something in government and politics because I was a person who always believed that government could do good things, that government
Yeah.
should do good things.
Yeah. It should. Right.
And
Absolutely.
the fact that it isn't is probably more emblematic of a system and the individuals in it
Hmm.
than just of government in and of
Hmm.
itself. And so
Hmm.
I've always wanted to be sort of in the institution trying to push and fight to make it better.
Well, Mike, like you said, you have sometimes some people have to be in the system, make the changes from inside out. So,
Mhm.
with that being said, do you think you chose activism or do you think activism chose you?
Oh, activism totally chose me. I mean, I'll be honest, the pandemic was horrible on so many fronts, right,
Yeah.
for our nation and the
Yeah.
world. We lost loved ones. I know a lot of people did in our communities. And at that time, my family, we were just spending time together, watching Netflix movies and staying
Hmm.
up late, having deep conversations. We were just bonding really throughout the first several months until we learned about this pipeline. And then there was a huge pivot.
Hmm.
6 hours of my day after work were dedicated to this thing, and my family joining the calls, and we going to knock on doors and informing people, wearing double mask and stuff. And so that really is what called me most recently. But it's
Hmm.
always out of need, even if it's out of the textbook need. It's just out of need. It's like,
Hmm.
I don't know, but listen, when I see a problem, there's
Hmm.
something in me that says I've got to do something about it. And I know a lot of
Hmm.
people, they see a problem and they're like, oh, that's just so bad. Me, I immediately think, is there anything I can do?
Right. Right. Absolutely. You mentioned financially poor but spiritually rich. That is a saying that you're known for.
Mhm.
Um, and I believe your father was a pastor, right?
He is,
He
yeah,
was a pastor, so PK kid. Okay, great.
absolutely.
So, how do you feel like it shaped overall, like your sense of like justice, leadership, public service? Like, how do you think your raising kind of ultimately shaped where you are right now?
Absolutely. Faith is an extraordinarily large part of who I am.
Okay.
As this person said once, much smarter than me, I love the Black church and she loved me back. I've been very
Hmm.
blessed from the time before I was born until now to be
Hmm.
raised, educated, trained in the Black church.
Hmm.
My in essence, our one of our god grandfathers, Dr. Alvin O'Neill Jackson, Dr. Frank Anthony Thomas.
Hmm.
Now I'm under the tutelage of Dr. Jay Williams and Dr. Gina Stewart, and of course my daddy being a pastor, and my mom being a teacher, Dr. Kimberly Owens Pearson. I mean, I've been fortunate to be around people who've always pursued excellence, education, and with a deep and profound appreciation for Black history and what we have contributed to this experiment called America. And my faith has always been one rooted in Black liberation theology, which is a
Mhm.
theology that's good for everybody,
Right.
but is centered on the most
Mhm.
oppressed. It's like
Mhm.
if you do, and this is what I tell people politically, and I'm not just saying
Mhm.
this because I'm talking to,
Mhm.
to you, but if you do well for Black women, you do
Okay.
well for everybody. Right?
Mm.
If we meet the
It trickles you
needs,
like it ends up trickling down.
it ends up absolutely because
Okay.
Black women deal with what, right, Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw says, right, is the intersectionality of oppression. Being Black and being a
Yeah.
woman in this society, in this American context in particular, right,
Mhm.
is the hardest place within the caste system. And
Mhm.
so if we started to meet the needs of Black women's health,
Mhm.
with better access to health care, because we
Mhm.
know maternal mortality is 3 times more for Black women. If we start to close the wage gap and provide
Mhm.
more wealth and economic opportunity for entrepreneurship for Black women,
Mhm.
right? Like we know the multiplier effects in our community are substantial. And so
Right.
when I think about Dr. James Cone saying God is always on the side of the oppressed, that means that's the side I'm supposed to be on, right? Fighting for
Mhm.
the oppressed by
Mhm.
choosing a social location with folks who are excluded, people who are
Mhm.
marginalized, people who are being stepped on, which is why I don't participate in any oppression politics, right? I don't oppress women. I don't oppress Black people, Latino people, queer people. I'm not in the game of oppressing folks. I'm in the game of lifting everybody up because I believe when we lift from the bottom, everybody rises. And if we
Mhm.
invest in people's needs, we will be able to move forward more as a country versus if the billionaires and the people at the top keep getting
Mhm.
all the money, all the resources, all the
Mhm.
access, and then the
Mhm.
rest of us are just left to wallow, right? Like
Mhm.
I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's the way it should be. But my
Absolutely.
theology is tied into that.
No, I love how that trickled down. And of course, brother Malcolm X said the most disrespected woman or person in America is the
In
Black woman.
America,
That's where that quote comes from. So to
still
focus
true.
on that group, it actually will benefit
Mhm.
everyone. I love to, as a Black woman, I love to hear that. I love to hear that. Um, you mentioned the book thing, which I think was a really interesting story about being 15 in the books. Do you recall any time before, maybe before or after then, in terms of, oh, well, let me ask it this way. Was that the first time you felt discriminated against? Or was there another
No.
time where you felt like if you were not a Black male, maybe you would have been treated
Mhm.
differently? What is your early memory of, that's not right?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. My dad went to Howard Divinity School, and so we
Okay.
lived right outside of D.C. in Centerville,
Oh,
Virginia, for
great.
a few years. And that community is very different than Memphis, right? My school in
Mhm.
Memphis, 99.9% Black African American, and this school it was like 5 Black young
Mhm.
boys, probably 10 of us total. Very different
Mhm.
environment, and that was probably the first times that I experienced racism and prejudice so direct and head on. But I'll be vulnerable and honest with you. When I was back home in Memphis, we always would drive by these huge homes, and we would always call them, white people's mansions, right? White people's
Mhm.
homes. So there was something that was ingrained at a younger age that better was always given to white people, and that was not us.
Mhm.
And I don't know necessarily where that comes from,
Mhm.
but the socialization that I experienced, even as a very young kid, right,
Mhm.
created this perception that was not accessible to us, or,
Mhm.
or that those neighborhoods were not for us.
Mhm.
Now I know, right, there are Black people in those neighborhoods
Right.
for sure, and
Right.
and you got access to them. But I think there's some socialization that I have to acknowledge. But most
Mhm.
directly, being called the N word
Mhm.
in while living in Virginia, that happened the first
Mhm.
time ever there.
Mhm.
Being told that I had become class president, school president in elementary school, and I got told by someone, we're going to scratch your name off of there because some of the white kids, in essence, didn't like me and were saying
Mhm.
it's like horrible stuff. So I did, even at a young
Mhm.
age, like experienced a lot of discrimination and a lot of hate that shows up in
Mhm.
my comments, now on social
Right.
media. And so
Yeah.
I'm not new to it. That hate
Right.
doesn't disappear. And this is something I've told people about the taking away of Black political power through these racist maps. The hatred that was at the bottom of lynching trees, the same
Mhm.
people whose ancestors smiled in those pictures and who
Mhm.
watched as our ancestor angels were killed,
Mhm.
that hate did not disappear just because the
Mhm.
ropes did. It
Mhm.
dissipated into institutions of power. And so those kids who watched those lynchings, they became judges, they became
Mm,
sheriffs, they became state house members, they became congressmen, they became governors, they became US senators, they became
mm,
state senators. The power is what they got. And now, using the power of the institutions, they're able to solidify that hate legislatively and statutorily.
mm,
And then they get to point to that and say, well, it's the law. So it's the law to legally lynch people with lethal injections, right?
mhm,
It's the
mhm,
law for you not to stand in the street and protest. It's the law. And I think in this moment in time, we really have a responsibility to seek for that consciousness above law, as Dr. King would say, in
mhm,
our pursuit of justice, which is going to require sacrifice. And everybody
mhm,
just has to determine what level of sacrifice are they willing to give.
mhm. Well, I'm so sorry that happened to you as a young person, but it's also a reminder of how spoiled I am because I'm originally, you said your dad went to Howard. I'm originally from DC, so I went to a high school, academic
Mhm.
high school right across the street from Howard. The majority of, the people around me were Black,
Mhm.
so growing up didn't feel that. And it
Mhm.
was literally not to beat up on Virginia, but it was, I
Yeah.
believe it was the last state to free the slaves, right? Um, I did not experience racism. Like the first time I've ever was when I went to the University of Virginia. That was the
Yeah.
first time ever. And it wasn't my first year, wasn't my second year, wasn't my third year.
Mm.
I got all the way to the end. So I was almost home free. I was like, oh, this wasn't too bad. It's not too bad from DC. There are enough
Mm.
Black students here where I don't feel uncomfortable. And
Mhm.
not a white American, but a white Russian man, which I know sometimes people say Russians can be
Mhm.
just as racist, um, vandalized my car and wouldn't admit to it. I had to get the school involved. We had a whole internal student court system that if
Yeah.
someone lied, cheat, steal was like the honor
Honor code.
system. And then
Mhm.
if it was anything else, it was like this other court called judish. But it
Mhm.
was like this whole thing, and they were, basically my school was like, well, this is kind of above us. Like, you're gonna have to maybe go to the authority. They didn't really want to touch it.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I'm minding about. I didn't even know this person was watching me or watch. That's the scary thing. I
Mm.
didn't even know he was watching me or my car.
Right.
Even care. And it was a nice little red convertible, but it was an old convertible. It wasn't a
Yeah.
brand new car. But I think he was like, how dare her have this car?
That's it.
It's like he was jealous that I had this car. He probably didn't even have a car at all and thought
That's
he
it.
could get away. And it was actually a Black woman that
Mm.
was in the Russian house because he lived in the Russian house. I lived in the Spanish house. I was one of my majors was Spanish. And she came over to the Spanish house and she said, "Oh, I know who did that to your car. He was joking about it in the Russian. So, but for that Black woman being in I would have
Wow.
never known. I would have just thought it was, random. I mean, he went to the extent of
Mhm.
printing. So, University of Virginia is huge. We have our own transportation division, like buses
Mhm.
and all of that, right? He took
Mhm.
their logo, created like a fake ticket, and put it on my car. I guess kind of as a distraction, like. But I'm like, but why would I get a ticket the same day my car got vandalized? I mean,
Right.
he did a whole lot, And of course, I'm calling like, oh, I have a ticket, and they're like, ma'am, we don't know what you're talking about. We didn't give you a ticket.
Wow.
So when I tell you it went so deep, and I haven't told that. I probably never told this story on this podcast, but it just made me think to tell you that because,
Mm.
I felt like I have been spoiled. I hadn't,
Mm.
I can only imagine being 5 or 6 or, in
Mhm.
elementary, receiving some sort of treatment and how I would have, reacted or felt.
Mm.
But even just as a young adult, I felt terrible that someone
Mhm.
targeted me that way.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I mean, again, I almost made it past my that was the first time anything like that had happened.
Mm.
And so like you said, it doesn't, like you said, racism doesn't really go anywhere. It just comes out in other forms. It permeates, racism
Mhm.
obviously is taught. It's not something you're just born as.
Mhm.
And so I think that's why we have to look at what's happening in the institutions and understand that it flows from that. Now, you first really, really came on the scene as the Tennessee 3. right?
Yeah.
And I know you didn't know you would be the Tennessee Three, but and I believe it was over like gun reform protests and
That's
some
right.
other things. Um, I mean, as it was escalating, did you recall a time where you felt like, okay, this is probably what's going to put me? Because I feel like it put you on this trajectory. Did you
Mhm.
know it was going in that direction in terms of how intense it was?
I remember the intensity of it, and I gotta tell you, I'm so sorry about that experience you had in
Mhm,
college too, because that's a very vulnerable time as well. And that's the thing, is education space is where you have to live and stay. That's
mhm,
tough.
mhm,
And God bless you for your perseverance through it and
mhm.
resilience. Even though I hate that we have to be resilient through racism, right? That's like
Always
it's
got to
like
be strong. Yeah.
just wanna live. Just out here trying to live, not
Right.
trying to be called any slurs or anything, or call
Yeah.
any of you any slurs or anything. It's like
Yeah.
let me live.
Right.
So I do deeply feel that. And when I think about the Tennessee Three, we didn't expect that at all. Right?
Okay.
Like all of the press and the attention. I
Yeah, it
mean,
was huge.
it would
Yeah.
be a year later before I realized that it was not just like, news after it happened, but like CNN had a whole panel, with Van Jones and folks,
Mhm,
looking at it and then commenting. And I was like, wait a minute, what?
mhm,
So it was, I think it was obviously a significant moment. And when you think about what's happened with this racist redistricting and gerrymandering, it was kind of a precursor, right, to
mhm,
how far white power is willing to go to cement itself, right, and its faux authority using white supremacy, right? Like
mhm.
they expelled Justin, they expelled me,
Right.
the two black lawmakers, the white lawmaker did not get
Right.
expelled. And so our two districts, my district, which is majority black, loses its representation. And they didn't care at all about it. His district has a
Mm,
lot of diversity in it, and they didn't care at all about it. So it's sort of a
mhm,
precursor, but
mhm,
that authoritarianist streak, that anti-American, anti-constitutional attitude, right, showed up then. And it just, again, it never disappeared. It never went away. They never repented, right? They have continued on this for years, and now they just had another opportunity to be able to show it, with the racist redistricting and the taking away of black political power, in their mobcratic way. But I look back on that moment. April 6, 2023 was one of the hardest moments of my life, for
mhm,
sure. Politically, one of the most challenging,
mhm,
for my family as well. And
mhm,
since then, gun violence continues to plague and impact our community and even my
mhm,
own personal life. I got a picture of my brother there, who we
mhm. I see.
tragically lost, December 1st, 2024, by gun suicide. People got to call 988 if you're ever struggling. It is just
Mhm,
so important that we realize we've got to do something. And sometimes that's protesting, sometimes that's
mhm,
advocating, sometimes that's writing those letters, sending those phone calls, running for office,
mhm,
supporting people's campaigns, because this is not the best that the world can be, and we've got to
mhm.
keep fighting for the world that can be.
Absolutely. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. If you win,
Mhm.
well, we're going to say when you win,
Yeah.
are you the would you be the youngest to hold that seat?
In
The
Congress
congressional
total.
seat that you win, like you win in
Oh yeah.
November, are you would
Mhm.
you be technically the youngest to hold that
No,
seat?
no, I will be the. I think I'll be the second youngest. I think
Second youngest.
Maxwell
Okay. Well, one
Maxwell
of the
Frost is
youngest.
younger than me.
One
I
of the
would definitely be
youngest.
one of the
Okay.
youngest. Yes, I will
One
be
of the
one of the
youngest.
youngest. Yeah.
And I ask that because again, we were talking about you don't have to be 50, you don't have to be 80. But then some people say,
Mhm.
well, I don't know. Does he, has he lived enough to really
Oh,
represent us? So, I mean, obviously, just with a few stories you told me, you've actually lived, apparently, you've lived a lot.
yeah.
Um, but what do you say to that? If someone is listening and they're thinking about voting for you, but they're like, I don't know, he may be too young. What is your
Mhm.
answer to that?
Listen, one, I appreciate you considering voting for me, and you should vote for me, because it isn't just that I'm young with a beautiful afro. I also have the experience to be of service to this community, as I have been. And most
Mhm,
people know me. They know me from taking on billion-dollar corporations, like the Byhalia Connection Pipeline, shutting down sterilization services of Tennessee, which was the leading cancer-causing industry in our city, or fighting Elon Musk so that we can have clean air, clean water, and clean soil, to plant in, who's building illegally dozens of gas permits, gas
mhm,
turbines against the Clean Air Act. But you have to have the ability to recognize issues and want to solve them. I know how to find common ground without compromising my values with people on the other side of the aisle or other Democrats. But do not vote for me if you think the status quo is working for you. If you think
Mm,
things are going great, your gas prices, you love them, grocery costs aren't a problem for you, I'm probably not your candidate. There's probably somebody
mhm,
else who wants to keep things the same. I am
mhm.
intentionally trying to change the way that things are to make it better for the majority of people, especially working class folk.
Absolutely. Well, I read that you received the John Lewis Good Trouble Justice Award, which I think is amazing. We have like a little merch shop on our podcast website. So we have different sayings, and one of them is obviously Good Trouble.
Absolutely.
And so we'll send you one. We'll send you a Good Trouble shirt.
Please.
So, so definitely feel like you embody that. What does Good Trouble mean to you? I mean, you received the award. That's his saying.
Absolutely. God bless John Lewis. And now so many people they celebrate John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis, similar to how they celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. or Miss Fannie Lou Hamer. But they don't want to take any of the sacrifices that they made, right? And I think that's the challenge of receiving an award like that. It
Mhm,
is constantly thinking, what sacrifices am I willing to make in order to make this democracy more of a democracy for its people? What sacrifices am I willing to make sure that the future generations of kids who grew up the same way that I grew up have more access to opportunities and less poverty than I had? And I think in this moment, that's what I'm thinking about. That you got to do something outside of the ordinary. Sometimes you have to use systems for what they are designed for, and then operate outside of those systems as well in order to push the narrative of justice, of liberty, of equality forward in the ways that you need to if we are going to
mhm,
live in a country that actually recognizes the dignity and humanity of all of its people. And right now, we are not there. And I think
no,
we've gotten a lot of people in positions who are too comfortable with just complaining about Donald Trump,
mhm,
just
mhm,
complaining about Republican Party, just complain. And it's like the time for complaining is up. It's like, what are you
mhm,
going to do to stand up? Who are you
mhm,
going to organize? Who are you going to mobilize? Who are you going to activate? Is everybody in your family who can vote voting? Is everybody
right,
in your sorority, your fraternity, your
right,
church, right? Like, are they all voting? Are they all educated and engaged? Then if
mhm,
they don't even know why to vote, that's your job. Go do your job, right? Because
mhm,
we've all got something to do in this moment in time. And some of us are willing to accept the more dangerous jobs, right?
mhm,
Or are called to those. And that's okay to be those people. But it's really important that we all realize we all have a responsibility to be somebody in this moment
mhm.
and in this movement for justice rooted in love.
Absolutely. Well, I know you're just trying to wrap your mind around just getting through this election and becoming US Congress, but something that, I don't know if you want to call it foreshadowing or it just kind of gave me that same feeling. So President Barack Obama he was not that well known when he spoke at the Democratic Convention. And I know in 2024, you spoke at the convention. And
Mhm.
a lot of times these convention speeches can really make or break you because it really puts you on the forefront. It puts you kind of like, for better or worse, like on Front Street, right? For people to be like, oh, this is the next person to come. This is the next person because at some point we do have to groom presidents. We have to groom, like just like they groom theirs, we have
We
to groom
do.
ours. And so I know you're just wrapping your mind around being Congress. But would you ever consider being president?
I'm just 31. I can't even run for president. So let's win this congressional race. And I
Yes,
think
yes,
the truth
yes.
is,
And but how did that make you feel doing that speech at the 2024 convention? Like, because that's a
yeah.
big deal.
It was. I felt very blessed. I was fortunate to go around the country campaigning on behalf of the Democratic ticket and VP Harris to fight for the country we know we deserve against what we are seeing now
Yes.
happen. Federal
Mhm,
agents killing people and separating families,
mhm,
big money in politics buying presidencies. These are the problems that we know we're going to have to address with an economic message that is centered on lifting up the working class people in our country. And so I just felt very blessed to be able to do the roll call for Tennessee at the DNC because I love my state. I'm a seventh generation Tennessean. My
mhm,
nephew sons make 8 generations that we've been here since after the Civil War,
mhm,
and it's really important to me that we fight for the places that we call home. that we speak up for them, and that we do everything that we can to make life better for people. And that's not Republican or Democrat or
Right.
independent or
Not
libertarian. It's
partisan.
just like, it's not, that's right. That's it. It's not partisan. It is just like we have a responsibility as elected officials to do all that we can to make life better for people. And we've gotten trapped. We've gotten trapped into fighting you and the people next to us instead of paying attention to about who is above us. Who are the people who are really profiting off of these culture wars and these fights? Who are in spaceships going into outer space? Why people in our own communities don't have enough food to eat and houses are sinking into the ground? You know what I mean? Like it's
Absolutely.
really important that we focus in on those issues. And so when I think about the world that we are creating, whether I'm in elected office or not, I want to create a world that is more just, a world that has more peace, and a world where people have what they need and a little bit of what they want too, because
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with that, particularly in a world we got people talking about they want to be trillionaires. Trillionaires.
I know.
What, right? Well, some
I
people
know.
are,
I
are
can't even.
like
I mean, I
trapped
can sometimes
under
barely wrap my mind around what actually $1 billion is, let alone a trillion. So,
let alone a trillion. And you got other folks who are like trapped with medical debt, trapped with college debt, right? Or from
right.
their master's degree debt. Like you're trapped underneath those things. And other people are out here not just living their best life, they are holding and possessing more wealth than half of the world. That's just not fair. And so
Mhm,
we got to
mhm.
create a more fair world.
Well, that leads me to my last question.
Mhm.
If we're gonna, like you said, you clearly you're doing your part, and you'll continue to do your part. It can't just fall on you and just a few folks. What would you say if someone was interested in, taking your path? They're, maybe
Mhm.
they're done with school. Maybe they went to law school, maybe they don't. I know a lot of politicians sometimes have a legal background that obviously is helpful. We don't necessarily have to go to law school, but they're looking to enter political office in some capacity. Where should they start?
Yes, start with what issue you care about, right?
Okay.
One, do it. I serve with some people who are completely ignorant of any of the issues that they talk about or read about. I've asked
Mhm.
people questions on the House floor that they could not answer because they were given the piece of legislation by a corporation who told them to run it. It is bad. So you are smart enough to run for office, right? Like you can do it, right? Like go do it. In
You're
fact,
like,
we need more.
trust.
Right. It's like we need way more capable and educated
Okay.
people running for office because we have a lot of ignorant and undereducated people who are currently in office, right? And
Yes.
so we need better people in political office. That's the first thing to know. Like assuage yourself that there's more that you need. You've got what you need. Your life experience is enough
Mhm.
thus far. But the other thing is choose an issue that you care about and are passionate about and do some work on it. I think
Okay.
that's been what's most helpful to me. There's no elected official in the state of Tennessee that knows more about environmental and climate justice than I do. There are a couple who are probably on parity as it relates to the issues of gun violence prevention and the work there. But you become a subject matter expert on a few things, so that you can
Mhm.
have that perspective to really contribute into the legislation and policy that you deal with. For me, I deal with a lot of AI, data centers, environmental issues now, and I'm probably the most well known in our state for dealing with those. Other people, they try and be a Jack and Jill of all trades. I think the reality is you need some people who are experts at something, or else you'll have
Mhm.
too many voices telling you what to think and what to do, and you don't ever decide for yourself because you've never sat down and studied anything. So choose an
Mhm.
issue, start to work on that in your community, and try and move the needle on something. Before I was
Yeah,
ever
and,
elected, I
and
was
volunteer for a campaign because
volunteer.
you
That's
may
the other
see it and
thing.
like, oh, maybe this isn't for me. Like sometimes you
Mhm.
also just have to see it. I know
Get close to it.
Justin J. Pearson is looking for volunteers, so
I am definitely looking for volunteers.
money,
That's in my
volunteers,
last
we're
name
looking for it all. So if you want to kind
for
of
it
see
all.
what it looks like, I'm to know he's
Absolutely.
open for that, and we're gonna make sure and
Seriously.
everywhere where this episode is, there is the link where people can click it, they can donate, they can volunteer, and
Yes,
all that
come
good stuff.
on.
But definitely,
We need
volunteering for
you.
a campaign, I think, is something. Before you even you need to experience. And I lied. One last question. Fill in the blank. Uh, Vote for Representative Justin J. Pearson because.
Because it's about us.
Oh, I
This
like that.
campaign isn't about Justin J. Pearson. It's about us. It's about our
Okay.
community. It's about our future. And it's about the one that we're going to build together. And I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You've been trained very well. Very well. Very well. Uh, so with that being said, there is, a lot of, craziness in the world. We try
So,
to end with a Black excellence moment of the week. Um,
mhm.
our sister Jasmine Crockett, who is a Black attorney and
Mhm.
obviously is still sit in her current seat. Obviously
Mhm.
ran for Senate and did not win. The
Mhm.
powers maybe, they just didn't want her to be great, but she is not stopping. She's helping other campaigns, and I'm excited also for her future. She is our Black Excellence Moment of the Week. Before she gets out of office, I think she's going to sign and push whatever she can push. And one of the things that she's recently pushing is the Stop Trump Act, as it relates to him trying to give taxpayer money to January Sixers. He says, well, if they did anything wrong, it's because they were trying to defend me. And because they suffered, I want to reimburse them. And I'm like, in what world do we reimburse people that commit crimes? Like, what are you
I know.
like? What are
I
you
know.
talking about? Sometimes I do feel like we're in that like a Simpsons episode, or like just in our like
It's fine.
alternative universe. I'm like, I don't
Mhm.
know what you're actually talking about. Because if any other president did this, it would be like, how dare you? Right,
Absolutely.
exactly. So, um, Representative Jasmine Crockett, I think until it is her last day, she's definitely another one that obviously is in U.S. Congress, is on the forefront. As long as she's in her seat, she's not going to be quiet. She's always going to call things out. And we need that. We need that. So she's our Black Excellence Moment of the Week. And you obviously are just Black excellence and embodied. Your parents should be very proud. I know your brother is smiling like, oh, go Justin, go Justin, go.
Mhm.
And obviously we are rooting for you. And as always, we're rooting for everyone Black. Take care, everyone.